Okay, well, my name's Doreen Cuffer. I am a private attorney in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I practice in the area of family law. Family law is everything from divorces, child custody cases, um, finding out whether or not you are the father of a child, um, to the fun parts of the law, which is family creation. So adoptions for people, or how people can make families through alternative reproductive therapies. So it's very exciting field. It's, as we'll talk about later, it's never the same every day. I've been in Albuquerque for, I think, about 13 years. I moved here from the Chicago area. I was born and raised in Chicago, actually northwest suburb of Chicago, right by Big O'Hare Airport, um, and little town called Park Ridge, which when I grew up was not very diverse at all. It was um, 100% lacking in diversity. Over time, that has obviously changed, but back then in the 70s, it wasn't diverse at all. It made growing up a little odd, especially when I went on in life and went to college and noticed that there were other people and other races and other cultures and things that I wanted to know. And then obviously moving here was a completely new experience with the combination and clash of cultures that is New Mexico. I've thought about this, and I think that what kind of set the framework was um, my involvement in high school in the arts. I was a member of the band. I played the flute. I was in marching band. I was involved in theater, and it kind of allowed that kind of little star in me to come out, and to get over some of my fears of being in front of people, which if you're a lawyer, and especially if you're a litigation attorney like public defender or in family law, you really need to get over that and be able to speak to people, have conversations, not be afraid to talk in front of groups. um, and the other thing that was so important was the political science classes that we had in high school. And those, I I think that's one of the areas that today's education may be lacking a little bit, because we learned about the Constitution, about government, about laws, how everything works together, and is supposed to work for the people. And I think that put a little kernel inside of me that said that the law is able to be used to help people, contrary to all the nasty lawyer jokes. Um, it I think a majority of lawyers really do come at the profession from uh, a wanting to help people viewpoint instead of wanting to get money from people viewpoint. And I think that kind of is panned out in my whole career, because from the time I graduated law school until 11 years ago, I was working for governments and nonprofits. I wasn't making very much money at all, but it was all about being able to help people and use those unique skills that I learned to be able to do for people what they couldn't do for themselves. So before I moved here, I was a public defender. Public defenders are provided by the state to represent individuals who have been charged with a criminal offense. I worked in the city of Chicago, County of Cook, one of the largest counties in the United States, representing individuals from everything from traffic offenses when I first started to death penalty murder cases when I left there. And so back in, I think it was 2007, 2008, I was laid off and then not laid off and then laid off and not laid off about 5 times. And I really enjoyed the work that I was doing. But I just couldn't live with that uncertainty of not knowing if I was going to have a paycheck the next day. So I looked around, and my spouse and I said, New Mexico, that's pretty cool. Looked for jobs here, ended up getting a job as the litigation director for New Mexico Legal Aid, which is the civil side of free lawyers for people, right? So legal aid represents people in evictions and public benefits, like if you're trying to get on Medicaid or getting Social Security disability, or if you're in a domestic violence situation, the real hardcore civil areas where people need to have lawyers even though they aren't provided by law. So it's a federally funded and grant funded organization, and did that for about 18, 20 months, almost 2 years. It got to be, the office is statewide. And I did not know how big New Mexico was until I moved here. There is so much land, so many roads that go forever with nothing. Not at all like the city of Chicago, where in the city of Chicago, there are more people than the entire state of New Mexico. So it was, very, very different. But I would have to travel to all of my offices, and I just got tired of the travel. So I opened up my own law firm here about 11 years ago now, and I love it. I love being able to help people and getting to meet people in all different walks of life, all over the state. It's a great, great job. So a typical day for me is never happens. I have a book, I have a calendar, I have all sorts of things that let me know what I'm going to be doing at a certain time. And I can think on Monday I'm going to walk in and do these things, but by 11 o'clock they change. And I think part of that is because a lot of what we do is we just we get interrupted throughout our day with things that come up that may or may not be emergencies. So for instance, the types of different things that I do in any given day, I can have appointments with current clients to discuss what's going on in their cases, or to plan with them what we're going to be doing in the future. I can, on the other hand, be sitting all by myself in my office working on a case and looking at tons and tons of documents from people on what their finances are if they're in the middle of a divorce, right? And going through bank statements and credit card statements and investment accounts, or looking at values of homes. Or let's say one of my clients owns a business I don't know anything about. I have to learn about it. So one of my first divorce cases here, my client owned alpacas. I didn't even know what an alpaca was. But by the end of that divorce case, I sure as heck knew what they were worth and what they did. I could be reading about tax laws. I could be reading the law about how a divorce happens, or how much is appropriate for child support, or what's included in income to determine what your child support is. And those are all things that I do pretty much by myself or with my staff, because I have a staff. Or I could be in court. If I'm in court, it could be a simple just status hearing where we go in and we tell the judge what's going on. Or like what happened last week, I was in a 2-day trial where we put on evidence about this couple's finances, their relationship with their children, other individuals in their lives, whether people could, I mean, it was 2 days of witnesses and evidence, which was a lot of fun. I say to my clients, the only person that has fun in the courtroom is me. And that's usually because they've put all of their trust into someone who knows them for that 2 hours or 3 hours that they're in front of the court. The judge doesn't know who they are. And the judge can decide anything for or against anybody, and you lose total control. I like to be in court because I get to use my legal skills and my litigation skills, and so I have a good time, but clients usually don't. We also have mediations and settlement facilitations. I could be talking to a potential new client, and trying to find out what their problems are and seeing if we can help them, and then discussing with them what it costs to have us help them and what the process is. So some days I'm an educator, some days I'm the one who's learning. It just depends what is on my plate that day. And then the other side of the business, because I'm a business owner, is I mentor and train my staff. So I have 2 attorneys that work for me now. I have 2 paralegals, and then I have a whole business office. So some days I may be looking at my own office's financials, or I may be sitting down talking to the people who do our technology and asking them, what we need to do to upgrade technology. So my day can be anything and everything. And that's what makes what I do so much fun. Okay, so here's the thing. You don't need to know from the moment that you are born what you're going to do. And I'm going to tell you this because it tells a lot about my journey. So throughout my life, I wanted to be very many different things. At one point, I was certain I was going to go to school and become a veterinarian because I loved animals. Another time, I thought that the greatest job in the world was going to be a police officer. And so, but I graduated from high school and I didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue. So I I went to college. I started out going to a community college near my home, and saved up enough money so that I could afford to go to a 4-year college. And after a year and a half, I did. Went to Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois, and yes, there is a place called Normal. Um, and I studied business and didn't know what I was going to do with that when I got out of college. So I took a year off, and I was back in those days. I had some friends that were older than me, and one of them was a lawyer. And we had gone to a concert, and I'm going to date myself. We actually went to see the Letterman. You can look it up and see who they were, but they did great harmonies. So I went and saw the Letterman, and then we went out to a bar, and then went to breakfast afterwards. And this lawyer friend and I got into an argument about politics. We were on opposite ends of this issue, and she turned to me and she just goes, "You need to be a lawyer." And I thought, "Oh, okay." I was already done with college. I hadn't planned or prepared for this. And to go to law school, you have to take a law school admission test. So I said, well, I'll take the test. If I do well, I'll go to law school. And I studied, and I ended up in the 98th percentile, which pretty much guaranteed I could get into any law school I wanted to, even though my grades in college weren't all that good, B's, but not straight A's. So then I said, well, I've got 2 places I want to go to law school. I want to go to either to the University of Illinois, or I want to go to Pepperdine in California. Don't ask me why, but those were the 2 I selected. And I said, I'm going to apply to those 2 schools, and if I get into them, I'll go to law school. Otherwise, this isn't for me. So I applied to both of them, and as would happen, I got accepted to both. So I decided to stay in Illinois because my grandmother, she was getting older, and I felt like I needed to be closer to home. So went to Champaign-Urbana, and went to law school for 3 years. Law school's kind of an interesting education. They use something called the Socratic method, and someday when you're on Hulu, look and see if they've got Paper Chase on there. It's an old television show that was about law school, and you learn all about the Socratic method. But in essence, there are no tests during the year or the semester. You go to class, you can get randomly called on. You have to know everything that needs to be discussed about that particular case or issue. And then at the end of the semester, you take 1 test, a final exam, and you either pass with a grade or you don't. And so it was the first week was scary because the dean comes in and says, look to your left, look to your right. One of those two people will not be here at the end of the first semester. And so it's kind of like they try to scare you, I guess, into dropping out. But I managed to make it all the way through 3 years. And then that doesn't mean you can practice law. In order to move forward and to become a lawyer, you actually have to sit for a bar exam. And the bar exam is given in each state. It's different in each state. The requirements, how many days it is, are different in each state. But back when I took it in Illinois, it was a 2-day process, and was 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon for 2 days. And it was there were some multiple choice, like 2 hours on the first day, and then the rest was all essays. And it was on, they would give you a problem, a legal problem, and you had to identify all the legal issues and then write about what the correct law is that would solve that legal issue. Grueling, to say the least, and managed to pass and pass on the first time. And not everybody does, and if you don't, that's nothing to be ashamed of, because it is really, really difficult. Since then, I chose to move to a state that at the time I moved here didn't have what's called reciprocity. And reciprocity means that if you move there and you've got a law license, you just pay them some money, prove that you haven't violated ethics or lost your law license, and they will accept you and enter you into their bar. New Mexico didn't do that. So 12 years ago, I had to take a second bar exam. And glutton for punishment, I'll tell you. Again, 2 days, horrible, 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 horrible preparation, taking a bar preparation course, learning new laws, because things like Native American law were not taught back when I took the first exam. Illinois didn't have any Indian law in it. Things that I knew a lot about, the business side of things, commercial paper, no longer on the test. And New Mexico is a community property state, one of, I think, 8 in the United States. So there were a couple questions on that issue, and of course, family law. But again, I passed. So I apparently do well taking tests. And so that was nice. Of course, once I came here, I was involved in a Supreme Court committee called the Access to Justice Commission. And one of the leaders was a Supreme Court Justice, Petra Maez. Petra actually moved my admission to the New Mexico bar. It was she was up at the front because she's one of the justices swearing everybody in, and she actually moved my admission. It was really, that was kind of exciting. But one of the things I talked to her about was the fact that, by the time I moved here, I'd been practicing for 20 some odd years. Why did I have to take another bar exam? It just didn't make sense to me. And so I talked to her and talked to her and talked to her, I think, until I was blue in my face. And they put together a commission, which is what Supreme Courts do, and took some testimony and did some investigations. And now New Mexico does have reciprocity. So if I were to move here today, I wouldn't have to take a bar exam because I would be allowed in willingly. So those are, that's kind of how I got to where I am. But I do want to touch on, I also have an advanced degree. So a Juris Doctor is the degree you get if you want to be a lawyer. I have an advanced law degree called an LLM. It's a letter in Master's in Law, even though the letters are reversed. And so it's like getting your doctorate in law. And I got that in child and family law, and used it to actually be able to teach. So while I was in Chicago, when I was working at the public defender's office, I had a night gig at Loyola University Chicago teaching family law, which is kind of where I guess I really started to hone in on family law as a type of law to practice, as opposed to the criminal law that had been my practice pretty much my entire life. So that that that's more, the LLM is more similar to a doctorate in that you do have to write a thesis paper, and depending on the program that you're in, you may have to what's called defend your thesis, or actually get up and talk about it, and have people ask you questions. They didn't do that back then for the LLM, but I did write a paper, a thesis paper on to do away with the juvenile death penalty, because back at that time, children 17 and under who were convicted of violent crimes could be sentenced to death. And I wrote my thesis, and then the next year, the Supreme Court took up Roper versus Simmons and ruled in my favor. So I'd like to say that they read my thesis paper, and because of my brilliant argument there, decided that they needed to do away with the juvenile death penalty. So as a lawyer, you're required every year to take continuing legal education classes. So I think it's 12 hours a year, 12 or 14 hours a year. I got a specialization in family law here in New Mexico, which the Supreme Court has since done away with, but now the state bar is bringing back. And if you have a specialization, you have to take twice the number of continuing legal education courses. So I obviously use my time to learn the most recent things that are going on in family law. So one of the specialties of my office is what people like to call alternative families, but I like to call just, come on, we're all people, and everybody has different situations and needs different help through the laws. So our firm was at the forefront of the same-sex marriage fight in New Mexico, recognizing same-sex marriages, helping same-sex couples get divorced, dealing with divorces if you weren't married, how do you separate things, and then, of course, all of the ways that same-sex couples and heterosexual couples can create families, which is where the reproductive therapies, reproductive stuff comes in. And so I am a member of the National Gay and Lesbian Bar Association's Family Law Institute, which is a members only, you have to be invited in. Every year we have a top secret convention, because back in the day, there were people who tried to come in and find out what our strategies were for trying to get gay marriage, trying to get gay adoptions and things like that. So it's by invitation only, and every year we talk about what's on the cutting edge. So right now the issues obviously were trans kids in schools, 2 years ago, if even not even that long ago, was trans kids and people in bathrooms. Now we're looking at the use of religious exemptions and how that can be used to harm lesbian, gay, transgender, by questioning individuals, and how we can use the laws to continue to grow the rights that people have, and to not further restrict them. So I would like to slow down a little bit. I have built a successful law practice here in New Mexico. We employ people. We put people to work. We have a great team, and I love what I'm doing. But I'm to the point where, although it's my passion to help people and to be involved in kind of the advocacy that I am, I think it's time for me to maybe step back a little bit and start to have some time for myself. So in the next 5 years, I would like to start to do that. I don't know 100% what that looks like yet. I will forever be involved in the law in some way, whether it be back in the classroom, working in maybe for a nonprofit, advocating for women, or advocating for the LGBT population. But as far as a full-time career, there comes a time when it's okay to say I've done enough. I don't want to be one of those lawyers who works until they're 90 years old and can barely sign their name on the paper. Um, I want to be able to go out when I can still help people maybe and not have to worry about getting paid for it. So I think the one thing I would like to add, I have lots of little tiny soapboxes, so but they have to do a lot with specifics as to what I do. But so let me tell you some of those. Number one, don't make a family unless it's something you want to do. Please be intentional about it. Um, it is appalling to me that people who can't have children when they want to adopt have to go through counseling to prove to the state that they're good enough. But yet people who can have children just have them. Talk to your future spouse about why you want to have a family, what kind of family you want to put together. If you have to and you think it's appropriate, get a prenup, but enter into that long-standing relationship with some sort of intention. So that's kind of my big work soapbox. My school and kind of younger people's soapbox. Work and school, but work after school is hard. You can't just expect that people are going to give you things and it'll come to you. For instance, just because you graduate from high school or college doesn't mean you're automatically entitled to that big job. You still have to start at the bottom and work your way up. And be proud of that and do your best at it. Because if you do, the people who are watching you and who are maybe your bosses or other people outside that company will notice the work that you're doing and you will get advancements because of that. So don't expect it to be there for it. Know that you've got to work for it and put your all into it.